Berbera, an entrepreneurial city, but still in an unrecognised state and a fragile part of the world. The main piece we are looking at in terms of the external operating environment, Horn of Africa is a complex region, dominated by poverty, but with a great potential. Strategically located on the shipping lanes through the Suez Canal on to the Gulf and Asia. It is, along with Djibouti, the gateway to East and Central Africa. There's a question mark there. Anyone who knows their geography will also note just how different pieces of investment have gone into South Africa and Tanzania and Kenya to open up Central Africa. Berbera is strategically located and is often seen as a competitor to Djibouti's capabilities. The issues of fragility are there. The weak state, international approaches have not recognised Somaliland, and possibly private sector has exploited this gap in policy side of things to be able to exploit the opportunities that are becoming very apparent. Dubai Ports Authority, Dubai Ports World, has invested $442 million into Berbera. This takes us forward into looking again at the challenges. Matters of political control, the elite, where the money has gone, are not always as accountable as they could and should be. Inequality of opportunity, hence inequity, has increased as we continue to move into large infrastructural works that possibly do not have social ethics to the fore of what they're looking to do. Youth employment, always pervasive, is identified as the major problem, and entrepreneurship is seen as a critical ingredient in how to move forward. What do we do? The approach is one of looking at complementary learning. Test assumptions, engage in creative dialogue to look at next steps in stimulating entrepreneurship in fragile settings. Fragile settings are becoming more and more apparent throughout the world. Not always recognised, but clearly the case they are there. Sponsor constructive dialogue, find ways to address the inhibitors and build on the enablers. There are ways forward. Clearly the case is people are seeing the investment as a means to take advantage of wider resource areas. Let's draw through the lessons of what we do. Findings. Berbera has increased in importance relative to the exploitation of primary resources across its hinterland. The major investment has highlighted tensions as a small elite of businessmen and politicians have so far benefited from leading the concentration of wealth with the few. The special economic zone has lacked linkages into the local economies. We have seen investment into the special economic zone, but the sponsorship of wider entrepreneurial development hasn't been there. Local entrepreneurship further stymied by DP World and its contractors utilising their own existing contractors. No problem. This is the way that capitalism works. But surely with a little bit more social ethos, we should be seeing an approach that allows us to look further. UAE and DP World's disregard for understanding the social, political, local context. Again, it reinforces this sense that we are working longer term. We are seeing the exploitation of natural resources that have a market value globally, but with little regard for social ethics and social engagement. Fundamental question of local economic growth contributing to economic stimulus and the broader enterprise development remains unanswered. Berbera is becoming a transit point rather than a nodal point. We're not seeing value addition sponsoring local entrepreneurship and wider networking. The lessons of Djibouti are not being learned regarding localized development engagement. I'm sure as you listen to this, you have other examples where we're seeing massive infrastructural investments that sponsor quality capital use and development, but what are the social engagements? Such a setting has placed social pressures on structures regularly circumvented or undermined by international actors, weakening local governance in a region that is already characterized by fragility. Resources for public offices are short in supply. This has the effect of creating the catch-22 of local authorities being undercapacitated, international actors, and let's face it, we're also talking not just about the corporates, we're talking about NGOs, the United Nations, and other international actors. International actors saying the authorities are undercapacitated. Thus, they perpetuate their own delivery systems, regularly not addressing fundamentals for local economic growth and entrepreneurial development. We see systematic engagement by individual actors, not systemic change necessary to address social and economic ills. Berbera Municipal Authority, Berbera Economic Forum, set out an approach to sponsor entrepreneurship in what is still a very inchoate governance structure, with weak higher education support, inadequately developed enterprise enabling infrastructures, and poorly formed thinking as to what are the opportunities for enterprising people to take up. We're still talking very much of a cost plus trading ethos rather than a added value approach. No matter the strength of an approach, the approach must flex and work for specific setting. Never assume all is the same, because all is not different. Learn, adapt and adopt, deliver for individuals given the local economic opportunities. There is no panacea solution. Quality holistic programming addressing all aspects of supply and demand sides of entrepreneurial development is necessary. The role of multinationals in the way forward is very apparent. Post-conflict and conflict-affected areas need to be examined further. They are the great opportunities of development. We've seen this no end of times. The impact has often been negative because of weak state structures. How to make it attractive for multinationals to negotiate favourable terms of trade, looking at the socio-economic factors of the host city and the host country, even if it is an unrecognised territory in the eyes of many. Do multinationals only provide charity through corporate social responsibility? Or do they also have a responsibility to engage proactively in local enterprise development? Particularly when we start to look at green economies and the next levels of employment creation and where the world of work is going. What support is required for inchoate government and civil society in such settings, given the level of investment, given the lack of engagement that is very apparent in this setting? While immediate injection of foreign direct investment is highly desirable in fragile regions, the terms of this may be such the city, the country, may not benefit in the long run. It may even undermine the entrepreneurial nature of the city and its citizens. If multinational investments are not strategically integrated in the wider context and local economy, it will also add to the inequalities which may form the basis for future resentment and conflict. Thus, we're building bigger walls to protect the few who have invested, not for the many. The role of multinationals and state in changing the dynamic of entrepreneurship and micro and small business development is very apparent. How to change the present setting of concentrating power with a few platform controllers. If multinationals do not actively engage the local enterprise, they will circumvent and reinforce inequality, destroy entrepreneurial flair, and create the drivers of migration. How to build critical mass in local markets, facilitating enterprises to build an economy of business-to-business working. We're not really seeing the classic methods of looking at business to consumer, and increasingly, although this is very apparent in the informal sector, consumer to manufacturer and provider of service. Perhaps there's some lessons for all of us to learn from the fragility and informal sectors that we see where people are expedient. Are local city authorities, local private stakeholder platforms the right entry point for supporting youth entrepreneurship, building inclusion through economic empowerment? The need for the organisation of entrepreneurs, MSMEs, to be educated in how to lobby for the essentially enabling environment to sponsor entrepreneurial takeoff, reduce the churn rate of enterprises, facilitating jobs-rich growth. The classic ILO tripartite stance does not reach far enough. Opportunities are here for all of us to learn and grow. How to look and impact the factors of working poverty where entrepreneurial flair is hidden under working poverty endeavour. Let us face it, the vast majority of people in these settings, increasingly even in the most developed countries, we see people who are getting by, involved in what almost amounts to precarious employment. Thinking in and acting holistically, how to draw together enterprise development, fitting in elements of entrepreneurial spirit, for example, cooperative and social enterprises. Import substitution is clearly a case when we see marketing of abject poverty and the absence of basic services. Why haven't we seen social enterprises take this on? Ensuring entrepreneurship is understood in all facets as it means to address wider issues in fragile, complex, often conflictual settings. The issues of formal and informal employment. Lessons to be developed for all enterprise development given changing nature of work. Back to the thinking of the precariat, thinking for new social stratification and mobility or immobility. Particularly of interest in rapidly urbanising countries in need of entrepreneurial flair. Lastly, quality of work created under development agendas, noting lines of accountability for international development agencies. How to look and impact the factors of working poverty where entrepreneurial flair is hidden under working poverty. This is particularly apparent when we start looking at women's expedient entrepreneurship, where they keep families together and have been the lifeblood of social engagement and social cohesion, which has been wrought through by conflict on any number of levels. Possibly we have the opportunity with quality investment to address not only economic development for all, but address the considerations of the global agendas regarding green growth and environmental consciousness with a social ethos written through. Thank you.